as an alternative to getting arrested, to getting shot in the street like a dog, to getting shot in the street 16 times running. Come on, man. And so it is, tonight I would really like us as a community to reflect, especially the young folk. And then, I can't even just say the young folk, because the older folk, they contribute to it as well. Because again, the mentors that I'm trying to say exist ought to be in arm's length as well. We need deacons on doorsteps, not just in the sanctuary Sunday morning. We need young brothers to walk our elder sisters across the street. We need to take care of each other. We are a communal people. And somehow that message has been lost in translation. Somehow there are some blurred lines where we are not communicating effectively one with another. And this generational gap has to be bridged, because if we do not move from disconnect to connect, we will certainly find ourselves sociologically obsolete. In other words, we will not be a factor. That's less than an X factor. We will not even be a factor. And so it is, we have too many people locked up, too many people dying. And I'm not just talking about black folk. This is hitting Hispanics in Latin America. This is hitting the Asian community with the Asian gangs. You know, public schools, that's a veritable cornucopia. That's a whole bunch of people mixed up in one. It's a bag of Skittles, if you would. And so there's no way to separate these days, especially with the access of social media. We don't live in a segregated society concerning the ability to reach out and touch someone. However, politically, it is quite segregated, and that's just another broadcast that we need to talk about as well. But as for the here and now of the discussion, we are inviting police. Young folk, you are inviting police to watch you. And get this, on the video we saw that this was the third shooting in 1 month at the same gas station. And so when you look at math becoming arithmetic and look at the laws of averages, then the police, the coroner, the ambulance, they're all going to say, we need to hang around this area because we are going to be needed and necessary, because something is about to jump off. And it's going to require our presence. It's going to require our practice if you are the ambulance driver, etc. And so we have to look at that real critically and rethink our thinking. You out here curb serving, right? And you get picked up with a bag of dope, or heroin seems to be the craze nowadays. You get picked up with this heroin. You are looking at time. Time away from your family. Time away from your source of earnings and income. If you're in school, time out of school. If you have a job, time off work. And if the bills are due, you're pending eviction. Why? Because you decided that it was better for you to take this chance than it would be to pursue the guarantee that a degree will offer you. The guarantee that staying out of trouble will offer you, and the guarantee that living a nonviolent life will enhance your longevity. That's not to say that something else won't happen to you, but 9 times out of 10, if you are caught up in the gang culture, where there are homicides and drive-bys, if you're caught up in that culture, your chances of getting cut short have increased greatly in comparison to someone who is just living a normal life, trying to do their thing. And again, this is not just black on black crime. Let's dispel that myth now. Crime appropriates itself in its own community. Is there white on white crime? Asian on Asian crime? Hispanic on Hispanic crime? What makes black on black crime? And it's just a sidebar, but I want us to be careful as well as cognitive about the power of words and language and what images that they can convey, what messages they convey. Crime is crime. Sometimes I watch Snapped on television, and I don't see a bunch of Hispanics or black folk. It's normally a Caucasian woman that is upset at her husband, and she kills him. The show is called Snapped. I forget the exact channel it's on, but the point I'm making is that there are no blacks, no Asians, no Hispanics in that scene or scenario. However, the crime does exist, right? So we have to be socially responsible with how we describe things. There is no such thing as black on black crime. Stop using it as a vehicle to oppress people. It does not exist. It is a myth. Amen? So with that being said, young folk, what I need you to do is to, whether you need to find a mirror, someone who loves you and cares about you, start with your reflection and find that something inside of you that you feel God has given you. Find that something inside of you that you feel that you do better than anybody else. That one thing that you naturally do, that one thing that has your natural attention, your natural affection, your natural energy and rhythm associated with it and attached to it. Because that is your gift, and that is what God has given you as a vehicle to transport you from perhaps even tragedy to triumph. And I think one of the problems in our community is that hurt people hurt people. And so if you're not around people encouraging your gifts, if you're not around people who are sharing with you how beautiful you are, how wonderfully you have been made in God's image, how intelligent you are, how capable you are, then all you're going to hear is the hype. And again, hurt people hurt people. I would ask you also to consider the source. Who is the messenger? Who's asking you to hang out? Do they have somewhere to be in the morning? Who's asking you to join this gang or to carry this pistol or to fight in the street? What does their family look like? Do they go to church? Are they always in trouble? Are they known for trouble? Consider the source. Do they have friends or enemies? How do they live? Are they honest or do they lie? Consider the source. We grew up with a cliche that said birds of a feather flock together. Consider the source. Sometimes concerning the law, you are guilty by way of association. Consider the source. Consider your footing. Where are you? Right? Because see, police are less likely to mess with you if you're not at least appearing to be suspicious. And that is one of the problems that we have with hip hop. When I say it's not hopping hip, is that we promote in the video all these chains and the tattoos and the mean mugging and all these grimy looks we give each other, and just this whole crazy image of aggression, of anger, of hostility, of rage and vengeance and rebellion. We promote that image as if that's cool. And you have people now who have processed that image as such. And so when they see someone emulating, or better yet, they see someone who is the illustration in real time of that image, they say that person is angry, hostile, aggressive, packing a gun, etc., and so on. And so now a very innocent person who really has on a costume, who is searching for an identity, that adopted one off of television, this person is going to be treated as a threat because the image is threatening. So now you put on a costume, not on the 31st of October, a costume every day of somebody that you are not. Somebody that you are not. Life was given to each one of us to be lived and come into the fullness of our own selves. And as we do the dash between being born into life and then being born into eternity, that dash is our contribution to God's creation, humanity, and community. So what are you doing with your dash? If you died today, what would be said about you? What would be said of the life you lived? Where would you be found? Who was the last person that you talked to? And what was the last thing that came out your mouth? If you died today, would you feel satisfied with a life well spent? Would you feel cheated? And if so, would it be because you have cheated yourself? So I look at the videos and I see all these children, because grown folk are on a higher level, a little more mature. And a child is not defined chronologically. A child is not defined by being 18 or preteen. It's all in the mind. When I look at the children on television, it almost demands that not only the urban Serengeti, but all the other conscious people on this broadcast. Brother Leroy Wilkins, the producer, it's almost a mandate morally for us to take the time to try to reach out and communicate to our community, because what we're looking at is not beautiful. What we're looking at is tragic and it is sad. And we cannot keep, especially the African American and Hispanic community, we cannot keep blaming everything on the Caucasian persuasion. We cannot blame everything on white folk, because they weren't around. They were called into a situation. They were invited by way of behavior. And they had nothing to, they were somewhere else. Somebody else dialed 911. Somebody else flagged them down in the street. A dispatcher gave them the address. No. A lot of times you invite them to the party and then say they crashed. Behavior is an invitation. Looking and being and acting and moving suspiciously is an invitation to the party. So don't get upset when people crash your party. It's better to learn to do a different sort of dance. You have young girls on YouTube. Never seen it before in my life, but over about the last 2 or 3 years, I've been kind of paying attention to it because it's mind-blowing to me. You have young girls on YouTube, and it is the urban Serengeti's parallel to the UFC, the Ultimate Fighting Championships, cage matches. They're pulling hair, kicking and biting and boxing and wrestling on concrete like animals. Like animals, cursing each other out, exchanging body fluids, like absolute animals. And so it is, I call this the urban Serengeti, because in the Serengeti, that's where you find savages and animals. Some get along, some don't. Depends on the nature of the beast. But this YouTube, as opposed to YouTube itself saying, we will not promote this, we will not air this, it is glamorized, and to some degree, it is even necessary. So I will say that as well. On one hand, it should serve the purpose of being a spiritual prophylactic, something that does not allow you to contract the STDs of the current day, and that is not a sexually transmitted disease, that is a spiritually transmitted disease. So when you look at this, you ought to be able